This episode of Dana Being Dana is brought to you in part by Dr. Lance Law and Dr. Mihaela Bogdanov at Comfort Care Family Dental.
Hello and welcome to Dana Being Dana. I'm Dana Michelle and I'm thrilled you're with us. My show is all about different aspects of the human connection, things that bring us together and living life intentionally. The experience of a miscarriage or infertility happens far more frequently than we all realize. Globally, 48.5 million couples experience infertility and an estimated 23 million miscarriages occur every year. Yet it is something that we do not talk about enough. Many people do not talk about it at all. I am honored to have nationally and internationally known influencers in this space to talk about infertility. Joining me now are Dr. Charles E. Miller, one of the top reproductive endocrinologists and fertility doctors in the area, and his patient Anastasia Guido, and my friend Jennifer Ballard Croft. Anastasia, you are the mother of a young son, and you recently had a miscarriage. Can you tell us about your experience?
Yes, so I have a 15-month-old son. His name is Luca, and shortly after having him, with the help of Dr. Miller's office, we ended up pregnant naturally, which was just not supposed to happen. And we called Dr. Miller's office. They said, sure, come on in for early monitoring. And we did, and my son was only 3 months old at the time, so I was stuck somewhere between, oh my goodness, what am I gonna do? And oh my goodness, we got pregnant, and this is a miracle, and there's a baby, and so much excitement. And that quickly came to a halt when we found out that the baby wasn't forming, and it ended to be a blighted ovum. And that was really hard to swallow, especially because we did it on our own, and we thought, we can do this. And so I ended up having to have a D&C, which was extremely hard, not only for myself, but for my husband. And after that, a few months passed, and there was this just burning desire in me to get pregnant again. And many doctors, my OB, told me, you know, it's very soon. You don't need to have another child right now. And just knowing that we could get pregnant, I wanted to have another baby. So when my son was 8 months old, we returned to Dr. Miller's office and we said, we're ready if you guys are. And we redid a lot of the testing that needs to take place with infertility and to prep a woman's body. And with the help of their office and an IUI, I'm currently 21 weeks with twins.
Wow.
So
that's great.
Back to back, and you know, at first we kind of joked that the joke was on us. We said we were going to have kids close together in age, and now here we are with twins on the way and a 15-month-old. But it's a beautiful thing. Thank God for science. Thank God for Dr. Miller's office, and I'm just really happy to be on the other side of a miscarriage, because it's a really dark place to be during those months when you think, you know, my body failed me. My mind is crumbling with my body. It's really hard to process. And, you know, with a good community and backing, including the staff at their office, they kind of became family. And a lot of those women coached me through, as well as Dr. Miller, coached me through how to process it. And I feel really blessed to be pregnant again and be on the other side of my miscarriage.
So I want to clarify, did you have difficulty becoming pregnant with Luca?
We did. So right after our wedding, we decided we were going to start trying to get pregnant. And months passed, coming up on a year, and we didn't have anything. Not a close call, nothing. And that is when we sought out Dr. Miller's office. And, you know, you don't know what to expect when you head into infertility. And we thought, we're going to meet with this doctor. He's going to say, sure, these are the steps you take, and we're going to get pregnant. And that's just not how it goes. I'm sure millions of women can attest to that. That's just not how it goes. So for almost 4 months, we did testing and prepped my body, prepped my husband also with vitamins and things like that. And we were lucky enough to become pregnant on our first IUI, which is almost also unheard of. And we were super lucky, and luck is a big part of fertility, honestly, and mixed with the expertise and the science. And So yeah, we struggled emotionally and physically with becoming pregnant with Luca to begin with. So,
Dr. Miller, can you just explain, she mentioned IUI. Can you briefly tell us what that
So
is?
IUI means intrauterine insemination. Basically what we're doing in this case is we prepare a woman hormonally so that she has a good ovulatory pattern, but around time of ovulation we prepare the male sperm so that we concentrate it and we take out some of the semen factors which would cause the uterus to contract vehemently, and then are able to place that sperm directly inside the uterine cavity so it's closer to the fallopian tubes where actually fertilization occurs.
Okay, thank you. Jennifer, you had a miscarriage in 2019 that was somewhat different from Anastasia's. Can you please tell us about your story?
Sure. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
So in 2019, I found out that I was pregnant. Had not been trying. It was a welcomed surprise. I was in my mid-30s, and so my husband and I had been married for a couple of years. We're kind of deciding on the right time. But I knew enough to say, let me go to the doctor and see if hormones are right, if there would be any anticipated complications. And so in that process, I found out I had a fibroid. And it was in the visit with the specialist for the fibroid that I found out that I was 8 weeks pregnant.
Wow.
So we were really excited. I really felt like I had cleared the major hurdle of getting pregnant. And we waited the 12 weeks to tell our family and friends. Genetic testing went really well. So we were just fully preparing for our Christmas baby. My 20-week appointment, we pushed back a little bit to 22 weeks just because of some scheduling things. And a week before I went in for that's a major anatomy appointment, I went in with something very minor. It was kind of a phone call to the doctor. She said, come in, we'll just check you out really quickly. My doctor was on vacation. I had a nurse practitioner, and I knew right away when she was looking at the monitor that something wasn't right. I texted my husband, who was not at the appointment with me, and just said, I need you to pray. And so she went and got a doctor, and the doctor came in and said, yep, it is what you think it is. And she looked at me and said, I'm sorry to tell you, your baby doesn't have a heartbeat. I kind of blacked out from there a bit. But I think the reason why this story is really important and sharing stories is immediately everything got very clinical. I was presented with, you have options. You can have a DNC, you can do a delivery, and I remember just kind of very loudly saying, I need you to stop talking. I mean, at that point, I hadn't even told my husband, right? So cleared the room, told my husband, and I, at that point, realized I needed to take control of the situation, and said, I'm not gonna make a decision today. We're gonna go home, we're gonna talk about this. In slowing down the process, we made some really crucial decisions that I think really helped with grief and processing. We didn't know if we were having a boy or a girl. We decided on a name for our child. We decided if we were to have future children that they were not going to be our firstborn. I mean, there were just a lot of things in how we wanted to process it. I ended up moving forward with doing the stillbirth delivery. I was in labor for 22 hours, but I was able to hold my child. I was able to see my daughter, Christian. And so there was a lot that I learned about the medical process that I think people don't talk about, and I think it's really important to share.
Well, I thank you for sharing. We go back and grew up together, so I'm familiar with your story, and I appreciate you sharing all that you shared today, both of you. Dr. Miller, how common are miscarriages?
Unfortunately, very common. Even in a young population, below the age of 35, you're looking at 1 in 6 pregnancies end up in miscarriage. As you go to close to 40, it becomes 1 in 5. And by the time someone's in their early 40s, and many women are getting pregnant in their early 40s, it's 1 in 3. So, and most of the time, even in the young group of patients, we look at 50% of the time it's due to a chromosomal abnormality, either a bad sperm or a bad egg. And then again, unfortunately, I'm saying the word again because as a woman matures, more of her eggs are genetically abnormal. So that increases over time. So it's a real phenomenon.
Jennifer, when it was appropriate, you shared your story on social media. Why did you share, and how did you feel about sharing?
I'm a really private person.
I know.
But I was so visibly pregnant, right? I was past the halfway point. And so to some degree, selfishly in the beginning, it was the way to rip the Band-Aid off and tell everybody at once so that I didn't have to have the conversation over and over again. But very quickly, I was flooded with not just the comments, it was actually the personal messages of people that I know, I love, that had been through similar things, or this entire topic that we're talking about, whether it was challenges in getting pregnant, challenges staying pregnant. And I think that I really discussed a lot of the clinical aspect that I told you about, and my husband having to really fight for me when I was in labor for those 22 hours. There was a lot of pressure for me to do the DNC. It was not what I wanted. He had to fight really hard for me on that. There were some other decisions where I think the medical staff really wanted to speed up the process. And I know on the back end now that was for my benefit. I talked to my doctor when she returned from vacation, and she said, we just know how to help on the medical side. So for us, we're like, we need to get you through this moment. For me and my process, I needed to slow it down. Mm-hmm. And so I think in sharing that story, it helped me process what happened. It made me realize I was not alone, and I hope that it did some good for someone else who is going through it.
Anastasia, you didn't share your story on social media. Can you tell us why?
Yes, so after meeting with the doctor, we discovered that the majority of our problem was male factor infertility. And so I had to really respect my husband's wishes as well. A lot of time it is the woman, and had it been something with my system and my husband said, I don't care, I want to share anyway, that would have been really traumatizing for me. And so he wasn't ready to share. And obviously I respected that. So I kept it to myself. I did have a strong support group, but posting on social media wasn't something he was ready to do, and that's the decision that we made.
I want you two to talk about support, because I think it's very important for people to understand your thoughts on how to best support an individual or a couple going through this situation.
I think it's important and you may disagree, not to tiptoe. I remember when I did find out I was pregnant, I didn't want to post anything. I didn't even want to tell people I was pregnant, because I remember how hurtful everybody's happiness and pregnancy posts were for me. And one of my sisters said to me, why should you mask your happiness after the struggles you've been through? And so I did post it, and the outpouring of joy, and a few people that did reach out to me and said, I'm so happy for you, even though we are struggling. And I did privately share with those people, we did too. And so I think not tiptoeing around these people saying, I'm here. Just being present and being there. So you may disagree, but.
No, I agree. I think you take your cues from the couple, right? Mm-hmm. But I agree, the directness is welcomed. My husband, one of the first outings that we went to after our pregnancy loss, I remember people were being very weird. And at some point somebody was tiptoeing and he said, I just want you to know there will never be a day when I will not want to talk about my daughter. And that has been our approach. And I know that not everybody shares that, but for us, being able to talk about that we had this life. I do have a daughter now. I have a 1-year-old daughter named Karis. We tell her about her big sister, Christian, and we always will. So I think you take your cues from the couple and and the directness aspect, but I think you show them love, you show them that they're not alone. I don't think that you give false hope. I didn't know if we would have children again. I still don't know exactly what happened in my first pregnancy. Right. I don't know if they're future children in our future. So I think you kind of have to just be direct in the moment and be there in the moment for them.
What advice do you have for women or couples going through this experience, or who will go through this experience in the future?
Talk about it with each other, with whomever you may be comfortable sharing it with. Write it down. I journaled from day one with our appointment with Dr. Miller's office. I wrote in there, I said, guy seems to know his stuff, looks sharp.
Look sharp.
Yeah, and I wrote that in my journal. I said, and I think this is the doctor we're going to go with. And as that progressed, I wrote in there, met with Dr. Miller. He said, these are our options after the blighted ovum. Met with Dr. Miller, write it down. Don't brush it under a rug. Don't, that's my advice.
Jennifer, any advice for couples?
I think to the extent you are in a partnership when this happens to you, don't hold on tight to each other, right? Don't lose sight of, especially as the women, people will extend a lot of condolences to you, will check on you. Husbands experience, male partners experience the loss as well. And somewhat, as I've talked to my husband about it more, in different ways that are difficult as well, because they weren't carrying the child and didn't feel the kicks and all of those things. And so I think staying in that partnership and talking about how you're feeling about the entire process. Do you want to try again? What does this look like? You've got to be able to have that open conversation.
Dr. Miller, what advice do you have for couples who are going through this or who will go through this?
Dana, before I give my advice, I just want to talk about the differences between Anastasia and Jennifer. Whereas we talked about Anastasia's problem is a frequent problem. Unfortunately, frequent. Unfortunately, Jennifer's problem is a very rare problem. By the time a woman reaches the end of the first trimester, 12 weeks, the likelihood of miscarriage is really low. So it really, less than 5%. So it really compounds the grief in a situation such as Jennifer unfortunately had to go through.
Right.
Now my recommendations. Well, the first recommendation that I have is that I would recommend when someone does miscarry, even the first miscarriage, that a couple tries to determine what is wrong. Much of the time when someone is dealing with a general OBGYN, they say, well, you just miscarried, it's probably the genetic related problem and you'll be fine. No, try to find out, try to get the pregnancy analyzed so that you can determine, is it a genetic problem or is more workup recommended? Secondly, I would suggest by the time that a couple loses a second pregnancy, that absolutely they look to determine the cause. There are many things that we look at, whether it be genetic, whether it be structural, uterine fibroids, whether it be problems in terms of autoimmune, the body rejecting it, or bleeding problems. All of these need to be looked at. So I believe that by the time someone looks at a second miscarriage, it's time to get investigated.
That makes sense. Thank you, Anastasia and Jennifer, for sharing your stories. It is my hope that the transparency of my friends reminds someone out there that they are not alone. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Dr. Miller and I will be joined by 3 women who have turned their personal fertility journeys into public advocacy to benefit others. Don't go away.
Hello, I'm Dr. Lance Law, part of the husband and wife team at Comfort Care Family Dental. I'd like to be the first to welcome you to our office. We strive to make every visit a relaxing and stress-free experience. The desires and needs of you and your family will be our primary focus in delivering the quality dental treatment you deserve. We offer a wide array of dental services. You can relax and enjoy most procedures all at our convenient state-of-the-art facility. Your dental needs will be well explained and all questions will be answered by our educated and well-trained team. We pride ourselves in making every patient part of our dental family. We strive to be the dental provider where you will be proud to refer your friends and loved ones. Please give us the opportunity to be your new dental home.
Welcome back to Dana Being Dana. Dr. Miller and I are still talking about the important topic of fertility and infertility. Joining us now are 3 women whose personal journeys have turned into a catalyst for change and influence in the fertility space. Through their incredible advocacy work, they are a voice for those muted, frustrated, or underfunded. Thank you to Nichelle Polston, board member of Resolve, the National Infertility Association, Tanika Gray-Valburn, founder of the White Dress Project, and Dr. Camille Hammond, CEO of the Tinina Q. Cade Foundation. Dr. Hammond, you have one of the most unique fertility stories I have ever heard of. As you know, I attended Spelman College with your sister Simone Cade, so I've known your story, which made international headlines for years. Can you share your personal story that led to the work that you do today at the Tinina Q. Cade Foundation?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me and for allowing me to share and to talk about the work that we do and the way we support families. So my husband and I met the first week of medical school, and we had what I would consider a fairy tale romance. And a few years later, we got married, and I knew I had endometriosis. And so it would be important for me to try and get pregnant soon so that I could have babies. That's what I had been told by my providers. So literally we started trying to get pregnant on our wedding night. And a year later, we started going to the fertility doctor and started what would ultimately be 6 rounds of IVF. I never got pregnant, despite the fact that I was young and healthy. And at that last round, my doctor said, I don't think that you should continue with this because you know, thus far, you have not been able to get pregnant, and there's really not any reason to believe that if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to get a different result. And he suggested that we consider either adoption or a gestational carrier. And, you know, we were devastated. We didn't even know anyone who admitted that they had infertility, let alone they needed someone else to carry a baby for them. But when I shared with my, you know, with our situation with my parents, my mom and dad asked if my mom could carry a baby for us because she was healthy. Now, she was also 54 years old and postmenopausal, so she had already gone through the change of life. And my husband and I are both young physicians, and we thought, well, we never heard about that in medical school. So we politely declined, but my parents were persistent. They were very faithful, and they said, well, let's see what can happen. And so after a lot of talking, we moved forward to get her tested. Her doctor said they didn't think it would kill her, but, you know, they couldn't really say what would happen because there weren't many 55-year-old women who were trying to get pregnant with their grandchildren, any actually at that point. Wow. And so, but we moved forward. They were very faithful. And my mother at 55 postmenopausal was able to conceive triplets. We put 3 back, because we had always put 3 embryos back into my womb when I had those 6 rounds of IVF, and I never conceived one. And so I thought, if we put 3 back, hopefully we'll at least get one. Well, those 3 embryos are now almost 17 years old. And so, yes. So my message to everyone is, don't give up. I don't care how bad it seems. I don't care what the prognosis looks like. If you don't give up, there is a pathway to parenthood. It may not be the one that you imagined about when you were a little girl or a little boy, but there is a way for you to become a parent.
There is a way. Can you talk about how you have dedicated your career now to helping raise funds to help other families?
Sure. Well, so my husband and I decided that we wanted to give back. And the way that we thought we could give back to the community of families struggling with infertility was to raise money and give away $10,000 to one family to help them with whatever they wanted to do to build their family. So we had to register a nonprofit, and we named it after my mom because symbolically we wanted to give that same gift of parenthood that she helped give to us. And that first year, we actually raised enough money to give 3 families grants. And after a few years of running the foundation on my free time, I left my clinical practice and I run it full time. And so Cade Foundation has at this point given out grants of up to $10,000 for 134 families throughout the country. We've given out almost $1.5 million for infertility and adoption support. That's what we do. That's what I do full time. And I'm really privileged to be able to work in an area that I have a lot of passion and enthusiasm. And I can absolutely relate because I remember.
Yes, and I think that the work that you do is great. I can empathize with endometriosis because I had fibroids, and just anything that can complicate the ability to get pregnant is important to pay attention to. I had an embolization. I'm actually a patient of Dr. Miller's, and I had an embolization in 2019, and my fibroids are actually back. Yeah. So Tinina, I can directly relate to the work that you're doing in the fibroid space. Can you tell us what prompted you to create the White Dress Project?
Yes, absolutely. Well, Dana, thank you so much for having me. I am always ecstatic to have these conversations because I feel like they are so important.
Yes.
I think that once we begin to have these more often, then people will become comfortable with sharing their stories, and we will begin to eliminate some of the stigma and the taboo culture that we have around reproductive health. So just wanted to thank you for hosting this.
My pleasure.
Yeah, the work that we do is very important at the White Dress Project. We are committed to ensuring that people who are suffering with uterine fibroids don't have to suffer in silence, and that they understand that. And also that they understand that their story has power, and there's so much power in their voice. To answer your question, I really started this organization for myself. I didn't want to feel alone with uterine fibroids anymore. I didn't want to feel like I was the only one who was canceling social events or bleeding multiple days in a row, keeled over on the bathroom floor. I no longer wanted to feel like that. And for me, my story is interesting because my mother had fibroids. So I was familiar with what they were, but I still just felt so lonely when it came on to my peer group, right? I felt like I was the only one who wasn't wearing white at the white clothing party, or, who was canceling all the time. I was always that girl in college who, if you take a road trip with me, Tinina is the one who has to stop at the rest stop because of, frequent urination. So I no longer wanted to feel that loneliness. And I knew that if I was feeling it, then there were so many other people who were feeling it. 90% of Black women, 70% of white women will have some type of uterine fibroid by the time they are 50. So for me, starting this organization was imperative because we have to have this conversation. Anything else that, would impact that number of people, there will be commercials and marketing campaigns and just so much more. Even while I'm still on my journey to motherhood, when Dr. Hammond opened, I was just like, that's exactly what I needed to hear today. No matter what the prognosis, no matter what the doctors are telling you, no matter how you feel, no matter what has happened in the past, keep going. And I'll add to that, which is what our organization provides, which is share your story. And you never know who your story will help. And ultimately, it helps and heals you.
Yes. Nichelle, I want to turn to you. You're a board member of Resolve, the National Infertility Association. Can you tell us a little bit about what Resolve does and your involvement with the organization?
Well, I would love to say that my fertility journey has led me to Resolve and has also led me to these beautiful young ladies, Tinina and Dr. Hammond. I was going through infertility. My husband and I were diagnosed with unexplained infertility, and we almost wanted some sort of answer. So if it was endometriosis or PCOS, I probably would have been comfortable. But because it was unexplained, I was upset and fell into a depression. But I also felt the need to do some research. So I went to look for an organization and found Resolve and said, hey, I would love to see more faces of color on their website. So let me reach out and see what I can do and how I can raise awareness in my community, because I felt like I was the only Black girl struggling with infertility. I so much so that I remember going to a fertility clinic and running into a dear friend of mine who I would talk to all the time. But to answer your question, I thought that it was necessary to raise awareness, to be the spokesperson, no matter how embarrassing it felt like. I just felt like I needed to put a face on infertility for at least my friends and for the people who are in my circle. And so I stress to folks, I'm so happy that Dr. Hammond shared a bit of her story. And Tanika, you and I have had some deep conversations, but your story is someone's survival guide. And so I wanted to be a survival guide to someone so that they too can feel like, hey, let me keep this going. And plus, resolve means action, right? So it's important for us to be active in telling our stories, standing in our truth, and embracing our current normal, because our truth or our normal doesn't make our stories a permanent, or our journeys permanent. This is just something that we have to go through to get to hopefully a great outcome at the end. So Resolve is that organization that will encourage those who are going through, who have resolved their fertility journey in some way, shape, or form, and for just those who want to just be the spokesperson for those who are suffering in silence.
I applaud all three of you ladies for seeing a need through your own journey and stepping up and showing up, and not only in your own pursuit, but also in the way that you have been a light for others, for other women who are similarly situated, other couples who are going through the same thing. Dr. Miller, I want to ask you, how common is infertility, and does race matter?
Even if you go back to the late 1940s, when statistics were looked at, about 1 in 6 couples are looked at as being infertile. That really hasn't changed. And it really is not based on color, on ethnicity. It's looked at in industrialized countries, advanced countries, it's about 1 in 6. Now, obviously, that changes over time, so that by the time a woman is 40, 3 out of 4 women are infertile.
Wow, 3 out of 4.
Yeah, it's very common.
There was a statistic given earlier about fibroids.
Right.
Can you briefly mention, what they are and how common they are?
Yeah. So fibroids are balls of fibrous tissue that grow in the uterus. But they're also associated with terrible bleeding, i.e. the white dress project, as well as tremendous problems with pain.
When I was examined for my fibroids back in 2019, the recommendation was immediately a hysterectomy. And because of my own family history, I was hesitant to do that. Do you think we're too quick to have hysterectomies, or have them recommended?
I think that's why research is important, to find out what will work best for you.
Absolutely correct.
We're going to take a quick break. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Stay in the know at home or on the go with NCTV 17 News Update. This quick recap of everything happening in and around town will be delivered straight to your email inbox for free. Sign up today.
Welcome back to Dana Being Dana. Dr. Miller, I would like for you to briefly explain some of the medical procedures that we've been talking about or that have come up. First of all, can you briefly explain IVF?
Well, IVF is where a woman is stimulated with medication to create multiple eggs, to mature multiple eggs. Then under sedation, one goes in through the vagina with a needle into the ovary, takes out those eggs. A semen specimen has been provided earlier, The embryologist then places the sperm and eggs together into a petri dish, and fertilization occurs. The embryo is made, and 3 to 5 days later, that embryo is placed inside the woman, or the embryos are frozen to be placed at a later time.
Dr. Miller, what is ICSI?
Well, that's actually, we lump everything in terms of IVF, but really what we're doing for the most part in the United States and internationally is intracytoplasmic sperm injection, ICSI. In this case, you still stimulate the woman the same way, but now the individual sperm, one sperm is drilled into the ovary, or into the egg rather, to create the embryo. So it's much more efficient, and it's especially used when there's a male factor problem.
And what is a male factor problem? What does that mean?
So male factor problem may be secondary to a hormonal problem, structural problem, or oftentimes we do not have the reason why. There's a low sperm count or low sperm movement or even structural problems with the sperm.
And how common is male infertility?
It's very common.
Yeah.
Infertility is not always about the woman.
Exactly.
40% of the time, 2 out of 5 times, it's male factor.
Yep. I think that's important to note because I think oftentimes the focus is on women, and in many times it's not women, or it could be a combination of the same or both.
Well, Dana, the fact is, most of the time the treatment is directed to the woman.
Yes.
So we do kind of sense that, well, it's the woman's burden, when in fact male factor is very important.
One thing I want to bring attention to is egg freezing. Can you tell us what that is and what the ideal age is?
I think that's a very important part of our practice. When a woman is not in a position, whether it be because of work, whether because of relationships, or just because she's not there yet mentally to have a child, we can go in and do this very similar stimulation and extract the eggs and simply freeze the eggs to be used at a later time.
Many people believe that the age is 35 when they first consider their fertility. Ladies, can you talk about the age you were at when fertility became a topic of discussion for you?
I was 30 and I'm 41 now.
Okay.
Yeah, I got married at 34, and I feel like I got really caught up into, live your best married life before even thinking about it. And now I look back at that and I'm like, oh boy, I'm not sure, what I was thinking. But in any event, I'm 43 now and still on my journey. And so, you go through the range of emotions, disheartening and encouraged. But yeah, I really wish we had had the conversation earlier, which is why we encourage so many people to have it earlier, especially at the college level, high schoolers. We don't need to always think that we're trying to rush them into sex, but reproductive health is health. So we need to be conversing about it more.
Dr. Hammond?
Absolutely.
And
I was 25 when I got married,
Yep.
and 26 when I started fertility treatments. So
And
I was in my 20s, but I want to say what Tinina said was spot on. We need to do a better job at talking about infertility and just informing kids when they take sex ed about infertility. You have a lot of grown women who think that they are broken because every time they lay down with their partner, they didn't get pregnant. You can't get pregnant most days of the month. There's a very short window during the month where you can get pregnant. I feel like some of that information is maybe not purposefully bad. They're not purposefully giving kids bad information, but I feel like there's this whole push to make kids afraid of sex, so that they don't get pregnant. But that really puts people at real disadvantage when they get to a point where they're ready to conceive because they think they're extra broken because this fairy tale didn't come true, and it's always been a myth. You know, it's never been every time you have sex you can get pregnant. I mean, I know I heard if you're 16 in the back of a car, you know, it's going to happen the first time.
Right.
Well, if you're ovulating, it will. Yeah. But if you're not ovulating, I mean, this is a part of health. So sorry, this is my soapbox for the day, but we need to do a better job at arming the people who are taking sex ed in 7th grade. They need to know about infertility.
I liked how you said in other conversations we've had, Dr. Hammond, about how sex education needs to not be political, needs to not be religious. Yes. There's a very clinical and medical, informational, educational aspect to all of this. And it's all about just being informed, which is why I appreciate having the conversation about the procedures. You guys have all kind of explored or have opinions about these procedures. How expensive are these procedures that we're talking about? IVF, ICSI. Can you talk a little bit about the expense? And is that preventative from people for getting fertility treatments?
Illinois, I just want to say that unfortunately, as we all know, fertility coverage is state to state. It should be national. Yeah. We all should be under the same umbrella. Illinois is a very progressive state. The vast majority of women, of couples rather, I should say, have fertility coverage. And so it is, and it's good coverage. It allows us virtually to do everything from low-tech therapies such as inseminations to intracytoplasmic sperm injection. Many women also have coverage for egg freezing. So Illinois is a good state like that. It can be very expensive other places of the country, and especially if you have insurance that is written out of the state of Illinois.
Ladies?
Yeah, I like to say that there are 19 states that currently have legislation that passed allowing couples to expand their families. And yes, Dr. Miller, you're so right. But every state, the pieces of legislation are very different. Right. So some may absorb some of the cost of these surgeries, and others may absorb much. In Delaware, we have a great bill that is twofold. It covers such things such as IVF, and it also allows women who have some sort of medically induced problem to freeze their eggs. But this is why Resolve is so important. Yes. It's about advocacy and trying to get other states. We have 50 states. Why not all, right?
Right.
So we can get every state and just people equipped and educated to just go out and not be afraid to talk to their legislators, to not be afraid to talk to their jobs, so that we can help other women and men. That's the key. Advocacy is hard work, but it's necessary.
Absolutely.
Are there states, Nichelle, that are really progressive and others that are not, that you can mention?
I would suggest that everyone who is watching, just to find out if you're in a state that covers IVF, in a state that covers IUI, go to resolve.org and look for the full list of each and every state. But Illinois, New Jersey, Maryland may be a little bit more limited in terms of coverage, but Delaware, tons of others, but the list is pretty long.
You can find out where you need to move to.
Yes, yeah.
Dr. Hammond, can you talk about some of the funding? Because I know this is a very important aspect for you when it comes to funding these procedures with the Cade Foundation.
Yes, so Cade has a grant. I talked a little bit about our grant. It's up to $10,000 for fertility treatment or adoption. And if you go to cadefoundation.org and click on the grants page, you can learn about that. Or if you click on the resource page, you can learn about, another 50 or 60 grants from other organizations that support family building. On average, an IVF cycle just with your own eggs is going to cost around $15,000, including medications, plus or minus a couple $1,000. And if you get a cycle, it's bundled, one of those, either you pay this extra money and either you get a refund or you bring a baby home, those can cost $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. So this is not inexpensive. Grants are an important way to fill in the gap for some people, but everybody's not going to get funded. So I think everybody can talk to their HR representative at their job. This is August. We're in open enrollment. Your employer may actually provide an option for the insurance coverage. And it may be that if you live in a state, like Nichelle mentioned, that you can switch your insurance and go to an insurance provider that actually covers some or all of your treatment for a couple of dollars additional a month. Right. Also, part-time jobs, even 20 hours a week at Starbucks will get you $25,000 in fertility coverage. And that can cover anything from IUI, IVF to gestational carrier. And there are other places that would provide that as a benefit as well. So don't feel like if my job doesn't offer it, there's nothing else I can do. A good conversation with your HR rep to start. And then I think actually Resolve lists a lot of these places on their website, as does Fertility IQ, which is another great resource. But touch base with your resources. There are all these great organizations that have support to provide, check in and see what they can share with you so that you can get the support that you need.
Yes. I want to ask you all, what are you most proud of in the work that you are doing? Because you have turned into so much advocacy, which I think is fantastic. Tanika, I'd like to start with you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Sometimes when your head is down and you're in the work, you don't even think about what you're proud of. But thank you for allowing us to think about that and recognize that. But I'm really most proud of the community that we've been able to create at the White Dress Project, because when you're going through any type of reproductive fertility issue, you really, really need a tribe and a support system. So the community that we've created at the White Dress Project is really important to me, and I'm really proud of that, because we're a true sisterhood, we're a true support group, we are a true group of people who are encouraging each other, and not only women, but we're encouraging the men in our lives as well. We're encouraging our fathers, we're teaching them how to support us, our partners, our siblings, how to support us. So really proud of the community that we've created, and a community that has recognized that their voice is their power, right? And their story is their strength. So not only being a part of a community, but being empowered to show up in a community. So activating your voice, working on policy and legislation, encouraging someone else who may not feel comfortable sharing. So yeah, the community is really what it's all about for us.
Thank you. Nichelle?
I'm just proud of the fact that I'm able to stand tall in the midst of a journey like this. You have many highs and lows. And so to be able to stand in my truth and talk to other women and men about being active and getting involved so that no one in their community or in their circle suffers in silence, that's the one thing I'm happy about. And if I could change anything about this journey, I would change, and I'm talking about my own, I would change absolutely nothing, because it has helped me to become a woman who is strong in terms of sharing my voice with others. So I'm a strong advocate for fertility because of just having a group like the White Dress Project and having people like Dr. Hammond. Just when it comes to just no barriers when it comes to their advocacy work, I'm happy to be a part of the community and just be able to share.
I'm proud that I get to connect with people like Nichelle, like you, like so many of these empowered women and men who are using their voice to support others. It's beautiful to be in a space where people are concerned first and foremost with other people's well-being. It's public health, and it makes me really happy. So I'm proud of the community that is here that I get to work with on a daily basis.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Dr. Miller.
I guess a couple things. And I'm very proud of the fact that for nearly 40 years, Metropolitan Chicago has had a great deal of trust in me in terms of dealing with the fertility journey as well as minimally invasive gynecologic surgery. I still have a 3-month waiting list, even at this advanced stage. And by the same token, I'm proud of the fact that I continue to be an innovator, someone who gives back to the medical community, constantly teaching, looking at ways of doing things better. We're still creating new procedures, and I am very proud of that.
Yes. Well, I am passionate about normalizing the fact that miscarriages and infertility happen and the support available for it all, because it is so personal, it is so common, and it is not talked about enough. There are many paths to having children, and things often do not go as planned. Although it may feel like you are in the darkest of hours, you're not alone. There are people who have had similar experiences. There are people who will have similar experiences. And there are resources out there to support, educate, and empower you. Thank you to all of my guests for joining me, for your vulnerability and expertise in this discussion, and for the way you give others insight, information, and hope. Special thanks to Shaquita Lockley, producer of Eggs Over Easy, an incredible documentary that explores fertility in Black women. Thanks also to Comfort Care Family Dental for the smiles that they keep. Hopefully you have been entertained, if not encouraged or inspired. I do not promise to be an expert, nor do I have all the answers. I'm just Dana being Dana. See you next time.
This episode of Dana Being Dana is brought to you in part by Dr. Lance Law and Dr. Mihaela Bogdanoff at Comfort Care Family Dental.